near-Earth asteroids are always, they're not always potentially hazardous, but they are always chaotic. And what I've found with a lot of the NEAs are that they name them after characters who were exiled.
Hmm.
And so that's been really interesting. Like, I think Odysseus is one. Hephaestus was one of my favorite ones because Hephaestus literally gets exiled for a long time. Circe as well, I think, was an
Hmm.
NEA. And what happens is they get really close to Earth and then they have their exile and then they come back. Um, so I've noticed like a really big pattern of like characters who go away or get sent away and then come back, and that's part of their story or their arc. Those tend to be named after the near Earth ones.
Welcome to Conversations with the Planets with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Cielle Heiser, a podcast that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology.
I'm Lori Kaufman, an astrologer, tarot reader, writer, and teacher. I co-lead the Asteroid Special Interest Research Group for NCGR, an astrology organization, and I offer all different sorts of readings, online and in person.
I'm Alicia Cielle Heiser, an astrologer, herbalist, and witch living in Oregon on Kalapuya land, and I offer astrology consultations and teachings aimed at helping you honor your most authentic self and trust your intuition. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with the Planets. And today we're going to be talking about the astronomy of asteroids and how it relates to how we can work with asteroids in an astrological context. And Lori's been doing a lot of really cool research about this as she's been working on writing a book all about the astrology of asteroids. And so, yeah, Lori, just take it away. Share
Yeah.
some of the astronomy.
Yeah, I have actually like so okay, I'm gonna actually explain how I got here first, I think. And so when I first started writing this book, it was actually 2019. And it started out as me just like taking notes of random synchronicities, random things I was finding within asteroids in my own chart and stuff. And it wasn't until I was just thinking about this the other day, Pisces moved in, or Saturn moved into Pisces. It was literally the week Saturn moved into Pisces that I was in that document and was like, oh, this would be a resource that other people would want.
Mm.
And I think that's really funny because it's my ninth house of publishing. And so this document was basically just like my own notes for about 4 years, maybe, before I actually decided, oh, I'm gonna turn this into a book one day. And now I'm like finalizing it as Saturn moves into Aries. And I've been thinking about how cool that is. And one of the evolutions of this book is that after I started, I was doing like little retellings of all of their myths and then interpretations and lessons and things you could learn from them. But then I realized that putting a little table of the astronomy would be really interesting to know too, especially like the orbital periods are so important. And like, when we think about, let's say, like Mercury, right? Like when we think about the planets, it's so important to take into account their speed. Like
Hmm.
Saturn taking so long to move through signs versus Mercury moving so quickly through signs, like changes the energy of that planet.
Yeah, and just really quickly to explain that, the
Hmm.
planets that move slower, like Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, speak to significant generational shifts because, like,
Right.
Pluto and Neptune, especially, will spend, 14 to 20 years in a sign. That's an entire generation. And so when they do something, it has really long-term effects. Whereas Mercury, that moves through all 12 signs every year, has a lot shorter term effects. And then also the speed of a planet,
Yes.
most of the planets, except the sun, change how fast they're moving at different points in the year based off of their synodic cycle and how close they are to their
Mhm.
retrogrades.
Retrogrades.
Like when a planet is stationing retrograde, they are stationary and in the same place in the sky for a while. And so the things that planet signifies and the life topics that that planet rules in your chart based off your houses might be moving a little bit slower. Like when Mercury's stationing retrograde, if Mercury rules your 11th house of friends and community, you might like not feel like a lot of movement around your friendships. But then when Mercury changes speed and is moving really, really fast around the cazinis that it makes with the sun, you might like be hanging out with friends a lot and getting lots of texts and more, community things happening. And so there's a lot of really cool things that you can be doing when you look at the speed of planets
Yeah.
throughout, just in general and also in really getting nitty gritty into the details.
Yeah. Yeah, and I started to get really fascinated by these like little astronomy chart tables that I was adding to each character, and I started reading like the full like NASA site and Wikipedia pages for each one, and I started finding some really, really cool and interesting fun facts. And now that I'm like almost done with my editing, and the book is like 2,000 pages long at this point, basically. I have just like picked up so much knowledge, and I ended up adding a section, like a little like chapter question mark at the beginning of the book where I kind of went through and explained the different types of asteroids and the classifications. Um, because what I've noticed from all of this is there's so much intentionality. Like the people who named them, especially at the beginning, we've kind of lost the plot a little bit now that there's a million asteroids and 30,000 are named.
Are there
We've
actually a million asteroids that we know of, or was that just like a
There are estimated to be about a million asteroids.
okay?
Yes.
And then about 30,000 of those have been
Yes.
discovered. And then
Yeah, it's
as they're
something like
discovered,
28,000, some almost 29,000 at this
okay.
point.
And
Um,
once they're discovered by the astronomer who discovers them gets the privilege of naming them.
Correct.
But
And almost all of the named ones are in the 99 percentile of like larger than all of the others, basically.
which makes
Um,
sense because they'd be easier to discover if they're bigger.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So most when it comes like because I started writing, oh, it's 99% bigger than all of the other asteroids as like a fun fact, and then I realized that there's like
They're like all like that.
every single asteroid is like within 97% bigger than all
Hmm.
others. Because a lot of the asteroids are basically dust particles.
Mm.
So, yes, like
That's so
it's
interesting. I feel like there's so much you could do like
there's
symbolically to reflect
so
on that
much.
too.
Exactly. So I do think it's really interesting even just like thinking about that because yeah, the most of the little dust particle asteroids, the small ones have not been named, but the ones that are 99% bigger than all of the other ones are the ones that have been found and those have been named. And yeah, there's so much nuance to the naming. But something that I found really interesting because we're gonna do an episode next on just like fun facts that I've found because I've been collecting them. And I started adding them in the book too. I started putting a little section of just like fun little facts I find about each asteroid. So, um, as you read through the book and find asteroids that you connect with, you can start reading these fun facts and start piecing these things together. And a lot of the fun facts actually like really go along with the personality of the myth. And
Mm.
they're so intentional. And there's been so many times where I've like found these to be really funny. And when it comes to the classifications, which we're about to dive straight into, they've done a really good job of classifying them and separating them. So, yeah, we're gonna start with those, and then yeah, we're gonna do some fun fact episodes, and then I also would like to just do an episode talking about like my book process in general because it's
Yeah.
been so interesting, and we've talked about that a lot too,
Hmm.
especially now that it's almost done. It's just crazy. I just broke the 200-page mark yesterday, and I'm on the T's now, so I'm like, ooh, I'm like,
Wait, 200 or 2000?
I have 200 pages left
Okay.
to edit. Well, now
But
it's like 180, but
it's
yes.
like a textbook at this point of like the length.
Oh, it's 2,000 pages.
Okay.
But I have 200, less than
Left.
200 left to
Less
read
than
through and
10%.
edit.
That's
Exactly.
exciting.
It is exciting. Um, okay, yeah. So let's start with the near Earth asteroids because these I think are some of the more interesting ones. So most asteroids exist in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So something I've noticed that like seems pretty consistent is that most asteroids have about a 5-year orbital period, especially
Hmm.
if it's in the middle of the asteroid belt because that's where like most of them are. Um, but then,
Does 5 year, does that mean from like one point in the zodiac all the way back to the same
correct.
point? So then they would
Yes,
spend like whatever 5 divided by 12 is, like a little less
correct.
than 6 months or around 6 months in each sign generally.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Ish. A lot of them have like wonky orbits as well, so they're
Mm.
not, and that's something I've been adding as fun facts as well, because some of them like wobble, some are always retrograde, some like move really quickly through part of the zodiac and then really far away through part of the
Mm.
zodiac. Um, but they all take about 5 years to have their return.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so like most of them will have that. And um yeah, it's really interesting though to because a lot of my friends, I have like three really close friends who are exactly 5 years older than me, and often I will find that we have all of our asteroids conjunct.
Hmm.
When I look at them in our charts because it's like exactly that amount of time had gone by before they were in that same spot again.
That's
Um,
interesting.
it is really interesting. So the near Earth asteroids are actually a little bit different. These asteroids are closer to Earth, so they're going to have orbits that are a little bit more chaotic. Near Earth asteroids are always chaotic. Like some of them are potentially hazardous, but like
Hmm.
when I see NEA written on the NASA site, I'm like, oh, there's gonna be an entire page of fun facts about this guy. Like I just like know that they're gonna be weird and they like often will like get really close to Earth and then like span all the way out to the middle of nowhere and then they come back. So you can actually, the
Mm.
site I've been using, I can link it. You can look at their, it has like an orbit simulation of each one and I've been like watching them all move on there and like seeing how chaotic their orbits are. And the near Earth asteroids are always, they're not always potentially hazardous, but they are always chaotic. And what I've found with a lot of the NEAs are that they name them after characters who were exiled.
Hmm.
And so that's been really interesting. Like, I think Odysseus is one. Hephaestus was one of my favorite ones because Hephaestus literally gets exiled for a long time. Circe as well, I think, was an
Hmm.
NEA. And what happens is they get really close to Earth and then they have their exile and then they come back. Um, so I've noticed like a really big pattern of like characters who go away or get sent away and then come back, and that's part of their story or their arc. Those tend to be named after the near Earth ones. So those are cool. And then within the near Earth asteroids, there's a couple different types. So Apollo asteroids are one of the biggest ones, and they are potentially hazardous. Like the Apollo
Hmm.
asteroids are always potentially hazardous, and
Which
they,
Apollo can like bring plague upon humanity, and like
correct.
the scourge of the sun, like the sun can be very
Yes,
hazardous to us.
right, correct. And yes, and most of the characters that are potentially hazardous are like monsters. Like
Hmm.
when you when I've been editing a character who like is chaotic or has like an arc where they are hazardous to people, they are often hazardous asteroids as well. So the Apollo class are always hazardous.
Hmm.
Um, and they just like have a semi-major axis that's larger than Earth. So they're just like they're bigger, basically. And then they often will almost hit Earth multiple times in its orbit. It like almost hit here and then here and then here and then it exiles and then it comes back and they're weird. Um, And then the next type are Aten asteroids. Um, and a lot of these are named after the Egyptian ones, which is interesting. And then they have orbits that are mostly inside of Earth's orbit. So they're not always potentially hazardous, but they have really, really short periods. So they're usually like under a year to about maybe a year and a half of an orbital period, and they like move quickly like Mercury does. Um, and they have less chaotic movements. But because they're also inside of Earth and the sun, basically, they are a lot harder to see or detect, and they're also typically smaller. So they're less, like, there's not very many of these because they're less likely to be seen.
Hmm. There's not that many named of them, at least.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, there's probably a lot of them, but yeah, there's not very many classified ones. The next near Earth are Amor asteroids, and these asteroids are not hazardous. So there's a lot of Amor asteroids, and they are never potentially hazardous to hitting Earth at all. They're way less dangerous than Apollo or Aten asteroids, and they're often named after love deities.
I was gonna say, is it amor like Amor, like the Spanish
Hmm.
word for love? Okay.
Correct. So, yeah, the Amor asteroid, literally, was the first discovered of this type. So they just named it after him. And then when they discovered Cupido and Eros and
Hmm.
those deities, they named them after Amor types.
Okay.
So most of the more like romantic stories, those end up being Amor asteroids,
Hmm.
which is cute. I like
That
that
is
they
cute.
kind of committed to that theme. And then the last type I haven't really come across almost at all, but they're called Atira, and they orbit entirely inside of Earth's orbit and they never cross it. So they're like very, very short and super hard to see because the sun is basically like they're just super close to the sun, basically. And they're very, very small. So they have classified these, but I haven't really come across almost any of them.
Cool. So they're probably
Yeah.
not like named after important mythic figures and the type of beings that you're writing this book about.
Yeah, correct. They don't tend to be. The next are Mars crossing asteroids. So these are the asteroids that have orbits that cross the path of Mars, but not Earth. And they are considered a type of near-Earth asteroid sometimes, but they're technically not hazardous to us, but it could hit Mars.
Hmm.
And sometimes their orbit gets thrown off because of the gravity of Mars. So these are really interesting to look at too. I
Cool.
have come across a lot of near Mars asteroids. They're basically the inner asteroid belt ones.
Okay.
But they also do technically classify the inner main belt. So we're going to get to the main belt asteroids now. So there's the inner main belt, the middle main belt, and the outer main belt. There's not much to say about these. That's just where most of them exist. Um, and yeah, the inner main belt are often just Mars crossing, so they don't use inner main belt very often to decipher them. Middle main belt, I've just been calling them main belt asteroids. They're
Hmm.
just the ones that are about 4 to 6 years and they exist in the middle of the asteroid belt where basically 90% of them are. And then the outer main belt asteroids sometimes will have like a 6, 7, 8 year orbit period. You find those sometimes too.
Okay.
But yeah, not much to say about those.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say about those is
Mhm.
like one reason why it can be really helpful to understand the astronomy of different celestial bodies when we're
Mhm.
astrologers or using astrology is it gives you more like fodder for reflecting on how these
Yeah.
celestial bodies impact us on Earth. Like Lori was saying,
Hmm.
the asteroids that are dangerous to us are named after monsters. And then if you have
Yes.
one of those asteroids prominent in your chart, reflecting on the fact that like that celestial body actually poses a risk to Earth, gives
Correct.
you more to be able to make sense out of the asteroid. And like same with Jupiter too, because the asteroid
Right.
belt is between Mars and Jupiter. And one thing that's really cool about Jupiter is its gravitational pull
Yep.
protects us on Earth from most of the asteroids. And Jupiter is it's a benefic planet, it's a supportive, protective planet. And having the knowledge that this like giant gas body is out there protecting us from all these other celestial bodies gives you more material for understanding the nature of Jupiter as a planet. So
Correct.
that is what I
Yeah.
wanted to share.
Yeah. No, I love it. I actually was just about to get into that, so I love that. And I actually had a really cool moment. In Jason Hawley hosted a more interactive um conference retreat. I don't
It's
really
like
know
the
what to
Living
call it.
Asteroid Retreat
Yeah,
or
the Living
something.
Asteroid Retreat, but I don't know what to consider it. Um, yeah,
Less sitting and being lectured at and more
yeah, it was more
embodied.
embodying. Yeah,
Very of the nature of Jason Hawley, if you work with him
exactly.
ever.
Yeah, so I went to that and I took a class that talked a lot about Jupiter and we spent a lot of time playing and like pretending to be the gravitational pull of Jupiter. And I really had this profound moment because we had a moment where we like meditated in that class and I was like, I don't think about my Jupiter a lot. Which is crazy, but I just like I'm so malefic. My chart is just all Mars and Saturn, and it's hard for me to not think about Mars and Saturn all the time. But Jupiter is the only planet I really have besides Pluto below my horizon
Mhm.
line. And but it does aspect literally everything in my chart. It like
And it rules your
sees
MC.
correct. Yeah, and
Like
it's
it's
in mutual
important.
reception to my Venus. Like it is
Yeah.
important. But it just like I don't know, my like Mars and Saturn just feels so much louder, so I don't think about Jupiter much.
Mhm.
But I often joke that Jupiter is the sandbag that's trying to hold down the balloons of the other planets in my chart.
Mhm.
And I really, really loved this idea of like not only is it holding down all my planets, but it's actually like maybe Jupiter was the asteroids for me. Like it's also
Mm.
like, Jupiter literally holds the gravity of the asteroids, and I have felt such a pull towards the asteroid belt, and I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something there to start thinking about with like Jupiter not just holding down my whole chart, but like also it's like giving the beams to the the asteroids for me as well.
Mm.
So
It's
I thought that
beautiful.
was I thought that was really cute. I bought like a little he's right there actually, you can't really see him. I bought a little like porcupine thing in Santa Fe and it has a bunch of little spikes and it's like hand painted and I bought that to represent Jupiter holding all the asteroids, the spikes.
Mm.
Um and I thought about that a lot. So I really love this idea of like Jupiter and Saturn both like having such strong gravitational pulls to like keeping all of the asteroids in their place.
Mm.
And because of them, they're not hitting us. Like they're not becoming hazardous. Um, and that's a great leeway into the Jupiter Trojans who we're about to talk
Mm.
about.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, so the Jupiter Trojans are actually one of my favorite fun facts. They're really interesting. So they are the asteroids that literally follow Jupiter's path. And there's a lot of them. And they, for some reason, like really high key committed to only naming the Jupiter Trojans after characters from the Iliad.
Mm.
And I went through a phase of really trying to commit to adding all of them to the book. And at this point, when I find a new Jupiter Trojan, I've not been adding them. I've been writing them down in case I want to do a second edition later because they're still finding and naming new asteroids every day. so I probably will at some point. So I have been keeping track, but I'm not allowed to add any more Jupiter Trojans because a lot of them are like one-liners in the Iliad.
Mm.
Like they're literally named after a character who came in, died, and then is gone in the Iliad. And it's so crazy to me that like this is actually one of those things that like kind of pisses me off about the asteroid work because like one weird one-lined name in the Iliad gets an asteroid, but like this like huge highly revered asteroid or like a goddess of like Japanese descent like won't or
Yeah.
like so many pantheons are so underrepresented and then like we have
Like
every character from the Iliad.
that is funny. And even like you and me are like so steeped in the Greek pantheon. Like it's just like
Correct, yeah.
so, which is, because that's the lineage of, we're both trained in Hellenistic astrology, but,
Right.
and it's a, well preserved, really evocative pantheon. But yeah, like the Greek and
Yeah.
Roman pantheons both are way overrepresented when you explore mythology in the West, at least.
Especially the Jupiter Trojans. And they're like sometimes so boring to edit too, because it's just like, I don't care about the like what lesson are you gonna learn from this guy who like literally got stabbed in the first line of the Iliad? Like, I don't care. I don't care about him.
Yeah,
Um, but there's so many of them. Like there's like
interesting.
200 something of them.
Which is even like my computer's on like a pile of books because I just don't have like a good office space for recording. And one of the books, because I go for like the taller books, and I have
Yeah,
the Iliad in this pile. It's like
love it.
such a fat book. Like
Yep. I love that. Yeah, there's so many of them and it's so funny. But yeah, that's one of those big things that like I have been really trying to be so intentional about who I add in this book. And I've been doing such a deep dive into like everything. Like I've found a ton of Finnish characters or like Slavic characters. I've found all the Norse ones, of course. Um, I've found a ton of Japanese ones. I've found a couple like Inuit ones. Like I have found so many to represent so many different cultures, and I've been absolutely loving editing those because I get to like see the parallels between everything and there are a decent amount of like Hindu gods and goddesses and Norse ones and then obviously the Greeks and Romans, but I've been finding a surprising amount of like Slavics and Finnish and some of the weird like old really old Germanic ones that
mm.
like predate everything. Like I literally found the goddess who ended up becoming the Easter bunny. Like like didn't know that was a thing.
What's her
Um
name?
it oh man, what is her
Pop
name?
quiz.
Yeah, I can get it to you, but it was her name almost sounds like Easter. Like
Okay, that's cool.
it's like yeah, it starts with an E.
Hmm.
I can share it in the show notes, but
And it'll
or
be in Lori's book once
it'll
it's
be in the book.
published.
But right. But yeah, things like that. Like I've been finding so many really cool deities who are represented, and that's so amazing. But the Jupiter Trojans are so annoying because it's like, really, we're gonna
Well,
spend all
also like
this
Jupiter is so annoying sometimes. Like it's
literally
like Jupiter's so
Zeus.
privileged. Like I want to do an episode at some point on the sinking of the Titanic because the moon was conjunct the fixed star Shiot at the time, which is
Yes.
a fixed star that has like ancient associations with shipwrecks. But the chart of the sinking of the Titanic is a Sagittarius rising chart with Jupiter in Sagittarius. And like I have Jupiter in Sag, and I'm like, why would such a horrible tragedy happen with such a strong benefic planet? But
But
it's
that's
like the
such a
only,
Jupiter and Sag boat.
well, yes, because it's like the only people who survived the sinking of the Titanic were the
Oh
ultra
yeah.
wealthy, like Jupiterian people. And like in Greek mythology, Zeus just gets like annoyed with humanity and wipes out all of humanity and like restarts
Yep.
humanity. So it's like we think of Jupiter as like this really benefic, supportive planet, but it's like
Yeah.
it's
But
associated
Zeus
with
kind of
wealth.
sucked.
Zeus does suck, at least in like I mean, what were the witches in the streets saying about Zeus? It might have been different than like what Homer wrote down, but it's like, Jupiter is associated with wealth. And so it's like if
Right.
you're a child of Jupiter, you can be gifted all this luck and wealth and support and
Hmm.
beneficence. But then to have wealth, you have to have those who don't have wealth, or else the wealth wouldn't have any significance. So actually, I feel like it makes a lot of sense that the Jupiter Trojans would be annoying because like Jupiter's
Correct.
annoying sometimes.
Yes. Yes. Um, but there is a really cool fun fact about the Jupiter Trojans. So they have actually separated them into two camps. So there's a camp that is about 60 degrees in front of Jupiter at all time, and then there's a camp that's about 60 degrees behind or with Jupiter at all times. Which is it's so interesting because I have been like as I've been editing, I've also been including the sign they were in when they were discovered. So I'm pulling all of their discovery charts and I'm looking at where they are in my chart too while they're in my system. And I have all of the Jupiter Trojans in Sagittarius, which is
Mm,
which makes sense because I
yes.
have a Libra Jupiter. So it's really funny to see like on either side,
Like where they
um,
end up.
like where they end up. Yeah. But so they actually separated the ones that are in front and the ones that are behind. So the ones ahead are the Greek camp, and they're naming all of the Greeks for the ones that are ahead of Jupiter. And then there's the Trojan camps, which are the ones that fall behind and they trail
Mm.
Jupiter. And so, like, it's interesting because the Greek camp leads them because the Greeks won. And then the Trojans follow. But my favorite fun fact about this is that there were actually two exceptions in the naming because they named them before they discovered this and realized it and started doing it intentionally. So, Patroclus, is that how you say his name?
Patroclus. Yeah,
Patroclus.
that's,
Okay,
yeah, I
I
love
thought I was going to butcher
Patroclus.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
As far as I know,
Um,
I mean, I don't know if that's how a Greek person would say it, but
okay, cool. I'm notorious for reading and then pronouncing everything wrong.
so am I. And
So,
honestly, like, we don't speak Greek. So we're doing the best
right.
we can, but
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, my I have a couple friends who like listen to a lot of retellings and so they actually know the pronunciations and I read everything.
Hmm.
So
Same.
I'm always just like, "Oh, this person." And they're like, "You mean this?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
That's how my mom
Um,
is to me with words. She's like, you
yeah.
pronounced that wrong. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
sorry,
I'm
mom.
like, I pronounce everything wrong and I don't really care. Um, but yeah, so Patroclus is located in the Trojan camp, which I think is really
Hmm.
ironic and kind of funny.
Well,
And
and
then
also, can we just say who Patroclus is quickly? Because
yeah,
he's Achilles' lover
yes.
and life partner. And the Song of Achilles, written by Madeline Miller, is
Oh yeah.
completely written from the perspective of Patroclus and just a really
Oh, that's
incredible,
cool. I
evocative
haven't read
mythic
that one yet.
figure. Yeah. Which is like a kind of modern, like imaginative retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of
Yeah.
Patroclus. Excellent book, highly recommend. But yeah, continue with your
Yeah,
astronomy.
yeah. Well, and he correct me if I'm wrong, but he gets kidnapped by the Trojans at one point.
Yeah, he goes out in Achilles' armor.
Right.
And then actually, I mean, the point of Greek myths is that you know the ending at the beginning, and so you understand the
Right.
tragedy, but he gets killed. And so the whole point
Hmm.
of like Achilles' role in the Iliad is that Achilles gets to choose whether he has a prophecy that says he will either die young and then he'll be memorialized forever, which is like a theme in Greek myth
Right.
that like to be a hero and to be remembered forever, you die young, or he can live a long life with Patroclus and have this like beautiful life that's long and full of love, but then he won't be sung about and remembered for all of time. And so Achilles has to kind of choose. But then Achilles knows that he won't fall until Hector, who's the best, because Achilles is the best warrior for the Greeks, and then Hector is the best warrior for the Trojans, and
Right.
Hector falls first. So Achilles purposely avoids going to battle with Hector because he's the only one who can kill Hector. And he knows once he kills Hector, he will die. But
Yeah.
then Patroclus like convinces Achilles to let him go out in his armor and trick the Trojans. And then Patroclus ends up dying and being killed, I believe,
Right.
by Hector. And so then Achilles is
Hmm.
so grief struck that he finally goes out and kills Hector. And then that's what leads to Achilles' death and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Patroclus's war in the Iliad, or
Well, and
bow in the
that's
Iliad.
perfect because on that note, Hector was actually the other one who got placed in the wrong camp.
So he gets placed in the Greek camp then.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So it's so interesting. Yeah, because those two were Patroclus is asteroid 617 and then Hector is 624. So they were both kind of in the earlier
Hmm.
phase of discovering the Jupiter Trojans. And then it was like shortly after those two were discovered, they were like, oh, wait, there's two very strikingly like different types. And let's start naming these after the Greeks, like we have been, and these after the Trojans, even though these two got switched. But I do think it's really striking that those were the two that got switched by
That
accident,
is, well,
like
especially
completely by
because
accident.
Patroclus like gets switched by like wearing Achilles's
Correct.
armor.
Right.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
It's so interesting. Yeah, so that was like one of my favorite fun facts. I just think is so weird.
Yeah. So
Um,
here we are spending more time talking about the Jupiter Trojans than we wanted to. It's like they like demanded to be given their due.
always, always. But yes. There's also Mars and Neptune and Earth Trojans, but
So there's
they're
like an
super
asteroid
rare.
named Mars. Or no. Okay, I wait, no, sorry, I understand
The
what you're
Mars
saying. The
Trojans. Yeah.
Trojans in relation to the planet Mars. Okay. Like that's
Yeah, it
confusing that there's
basically
an asteroid
just
Mars, but there's not.
no, no, no. There's
Okay.
not. There's Mars Trojans and they follow the same Lagrange point is basically what it's called, but there's no yeah, I haven't really found any Mars, Neptune or Earth Trojans, but there are some. I think they're smaller. The
Okay.
Jupiter Trojans though, because of Jupiter's orbit, just like attracts so many of them
Because
and
Jupiter's huge.
exactly.
So,
So, yeah, instead of considering them moons, they just consider them
well, because
those.
Jupiter also has a ton of moons too. So,
Yeah, like
which is its
something
own.
stupid, like 140 or something.
And then Jupiter's exalted in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. And yeah,
True.
so much
Yeah,
beautiful like symmetry
symmetry.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I've also been finding there's been a lot of asteroids that I was surprised they didn't or not asteroids, sorry. I've there's been a lot of deities where I've been surprised they don't have asteroids, but they're actually
Mm.
named for a moon of either Jupiter or Saturn or
Mm.
sometimes Uranus.
Interesting.
Which that's kind of a deep dive I want to do when this book is finished, is like kind of look into if there's a way of tracking those moons. Fenrir is one that I think about a lot because he is one of the three sons of Loki and or one
Mm.
of the three children of Loki and Hel has two asteroids. She's one of my favorite deities. I will always be talking about her. I want to do an episode on her actually. Um, and then I'm not even going to pronounce the brother's name. Not even gonna try. But he is basically like a sea serpent, like a sea monster, and he has an asteroid, and Hel has two asteroids. But then Fenrir, the wolf, has a moon of Saturn, and like one of the first moons, and he's really important and really prominent, and he's like really big in Norse myth. But for whatever reason, he doesn't have an asteroid. And so I think like things like that are super fascinating to me, how
That is
there's just,
interesting.
yeah. So, and I wonder too if like you could maybe track like if this is Saturn and this is Earth, like is it on this side or is it on this side or like,
Mm.
is it visible to Earth because it's on the side of Saturn that would be visible or is it like being blocked by Saturn on the other side? Like I have a lot of thoughts about this, but
So
but
many
we
rabbit
can
holes.
so many rabbit holes. We can come back to that later. But the last type of asteroids are the trans-Neptunian.
Hmm.
So these tend to be the farther away ones, like the Kuiper belt um, exists beyond Neptune. I think it's between Saturn and Neptune, but it might just be anything that's not in the main belt, honestly.
Hmm.
I haven't like fully dove into that, but the it's basically like the really far away ones. So the trans-Neptunian and outer solar system objects. So centaurs are a big one for these.
Mm.
So the centaurs like Chiron, Chariklo, Ogyro is a centaur, Nessus. So these typically orbit between Jupiter and Neptune. They exist somewhere on the outer belt. And I want to do more episodes on some of the centaurs too, because they're really interesting.
Hmm.
What makes them the classification of a centaur is that they are half asteroid and half comet.
Mm.
And so they have like this duality of type. And so they ended up naming them centaurs and then naming all of the centaurs in Greek mythology after the
After
centaurs
them.
because they
Interesting.
are of dual nature.
Hmm.
So I thought that was like really intentional and really cool that they do that. And I'm so surprised that like Chiron is so popular, but like nobody really talks about that he's a centaur and in astronomy as well. And like
Yeah.
you hear about it, but not like nobody really explains like what that means, I think.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Because I didn't really know until I
Yeah,
dove
neither
into
did I.
this.
And then I remember because we did an episode about Okiro and Chariklo, right? We
We
did like
did. We did both.
yes, and talking about them as centaurs, and that's when I learned that even Chiron is a
Yeah,
centaur in like
correct.
astronomically, which just highlights how astrology has become pretty separated from astronomy, whereas in the ancient world they were, merged
Mhm.
together, and now they're not.
Right. Yeah, so that is really interesting. The centaurs usually have a longer orbital period because they often exist closer to Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like Okiro has a 24-year cycle. Chiron
Mm.
has a 52-year cycle. Elatus has a 41-year cycle. Chariklo has a 62-year cycle. So they're literally like about Saturn or double Saturn. They like
Interesting.
kind of
And then it's
exist
like
in
they
that
might
in
have more
between.
generational impacts as slower moving farther out. And actually, this
Mhm.
year, we're recording this in 2026, and Chiron is actually ingressing
Moving
into
into Taurus
Taurus and
today,
then retrograding
today.
into Aries. But is it today?
No,
Oh, okay.
I
I
just
was like,
said
whoa.
I said today when I meant this year.
Okay. I was like, crazy. But so
No.
maybe at some point, because
I think in June or July.
we've intentionally not done an episode about Chiron because
Mhm.
he's like the only asteroid anyone ever talks about. So we're trying to give all these other asteroids,
A voice
voices and share them. But maybe this is the year to actually do an episode on Chiron as he ingresses into
ingresses.
Taurus. Yeah.
I have a lot to say about Chiron and Taurus. I end up with a lot of clients that have Chiron and Taurus,
Mm.
and I just, oh my God, I have so much to say about that. So yeah, let's do an episode on that before I get
Yeah.
off on another tangent. Um, coming back. Um, so then, yeah, with the trans-Neptunian, then there's the scattered disk objects, and these basically have like really, really far orbits. Like they exist way beyond Neptune. They're usually like 200 years. They're kind of like Pluto. And they're very influenced by Neptune's gravity. I haven't
Mm.
found very many of these either. There's not many that exist. The most common of the TNOs are dwarf planets.
Mm.
So basically anything that they find that's way out there, like kind of where Pluto exists, they're just considering dwarf planets at this point because they have like such long, elongated cycles and orbits, and they just don't quite fit in a lot of the qualifications of asteroids, and they're usually like different, they have different qualities. So,
Interesting.
yeah. And then the last thing I'll like really say before we start to get into our fun facts and do those episodes, because I'll leave everything else for that. Um, But there's also binary system asteroids, and that
Mm.
has been one of my favorite things. I feel like we could probably do a whole episode on binary system asteroids because I have so much to say about them. But there are 582 asteroids that are binary systems, and um, they basically are two equal-ish, usually same-ish size, sometimes one's a little bit bigger. Um, two asteroids basically that spin around each other and then like share an orbit. So there's two of them. And the binaries are so intentionally named. Every time I find a
Hmm.
binary, I am so impressed by how they name them. And I think they're so cool and so interesting. Like Sisyphus is is a binary asteroid, but they didn't name the second one, so it's literally he's spinning with his boulder for all eternity.
No. Poor
Like
Sisyphus.
poor Sisyphus. They're so funny though. Like there's been so much of that where they'll name the second piece usually after like their consort or their son or
Or what
like
was the Romulus and Remus one that you had told me about?
yeah, that's one of my absolute favorites. So she's actually not a binary system, she's a triple system, and there are 17 of those. And Sylvia, she was the first triple system ever discovered, but they didn't know that she was a triple system when they discovered her. And so they discovered her in 18 something. I
Like
actually don't remember the
pretty
year.
early, because the first
Very
asteroid was
early on.
discovered in 1801. So,
Yes. So she was discovered in the 1800s, definitely not in the 1900s yet. And she's asteroid number 87, so she's one of the first 100. And in 2001, they discovered that she was a binary system and had a moon, and they named it Romulus because she's the Rhea Sylvia is her like full name, and she was basically there's a bunch of different versions of her story, and most she was like seduced and raped by Mars. Some of them was a little bit more mutual, but she was a Vestal virgin and followed Vesta. And she had twins, and they were Romulus and Remus. And Romulus obviously goes on to found Rome. And Romulus does have an asteroid now, but when they discovered that Sylvia had a moon, they named it Romulus. And then they discovered she was actually a triple system and had a second moon, and they named it Remus. So
hmm.
she has her twin sons that orbit with her. And they discovered this like over 100 years later. So I think it's really interesting that those kind of things keep happening where they name it something and then like they discover later that there's
Yeah.
more.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's one quadruple system and it's Electra, actually. And then there's one sextuple system and it's Pluto. So
Hmm.
Pluto is a weird one because it's kind of a binary. There's two same size ones. It's Pluto and then Charon. And Charon, if you're unfamiliar, was the ferryman of the underworld. So he was actually the leader of the boat that led those who died into the underworld. He would like
Those who died
ferry
who
them
had a
in.
coin in their mouth. If not,
True.
then they would wander.
Is that true?
Hmm.
So Charon doesn't have an asteroid, actually, but he does have the binary of Pluto. And then Pluto
Hmm.
also has four smaller moons that orbit around. And I forget their names, but Nyx is one of them.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
so I think a lot of his moons do have asteroids, actually. And
Very
then
interesting.
yeah, and then there's a couple different families of asteroids as well, and the families I won't really spend a lot of time on those. But a lot of the families they do believe maybe stemmed from one asteroid. So, like, usually what happens is they'll find the parent body or what is believed to be the parent body. So, one of the biggest families of asteroids are the Flora group. Because Flora was asteroid like 8. Like, she was like
Hmm.
very, like, top one of the first 10. And she's huge. And then they think that there was some sort of collision that broke Flora up into a bunch of little pieces, and that Flora might have actually been a planet at one point. And her little pieces are often like they will discover them and name them their own names, and then they'll group them with Flora because they have the same elements on them.
Cool.
Yeah. So when you see the groupings, it's usually like what they assume is the parent body, and then like it was probably a piece of that body.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great.
So, yeah,
Is
I
that
think that's. that's it. That's what I got for those.
Wow. Yeah, you've been doing so much incredible research on the asteroids, which really have not been explored that much from an astrological perspective. And there's just so
Yeah,
much like rich material here. And then we didn't even get into like the individual orbits of these planets and like the shapes they
yeah.
make. And like there's so much, or
There's so
not of these
much.
planets, of these asteroids. But that is something if you know that you have an asteroid prominent in your chart, exploring the astronomy of that asteroid and its orbital period and the shape it makes and what classification it has can really give you a lot of material to work with. And once Lori's book is published, that'll be very easy information to find in one place.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for listening. Like Lori said, we have all these other episodes that we want to kind of spin off from this one. But yeah, if you have any like reflections or anything that was this big aha moment for you or any questions about any of this, feel free to comment down below or reach out to
Hmm.
us on our Instagram. We love hearing from folks who listen to the podcast. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have anything you want to share or ask. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any personal stories to share or thoughts and reflections about what we discussed in this episode, please comment down below or reach out to us on Instagram. And please come follow us on Instagram at ConversationsWPlanets, where we share forecasts and updates about the astrological movements happening in the sky, as well as updates about our episodes. The link to our Instagram is in the show notes down below.